Hey guys, welcome to Dev Domain. In today's video, we are going to learn about the checked exception versus unchecked exception. So let's start. First difference is definition. So that is, in checked exceptions, exceptions that are checked at the compile time, that are the checked exceptions, and the exceptions that occur at runtime and are not checked at the compile time. So that means exceptions that are not checked at the compile time. Okay, so that exceptions are called as unchecked exceptions, and the exception that are checked at the compile time, so that type of exceptions are called as checked exceptions. So next is category. Checked exceptions are subclasses of a exception. Checked exceptions are inherited from the exception class except runtime exception, and the unchecked exception is the subclasses of the runtime exception. Next is compile time check. The check exception checks the error at the compile time, and in unchecked exception it does not check the error at the compile time. Okay, we get the error after we run the code. When does the exception occurs? When external resource like files, database or a network fails. Suppose you are importing a file name that does not exist in the system, then we will get the exception as a file not found exception. In that case, you will get an checked exception. And so due to the programming errors like incorrect logic or misuse of the APIs. So next is handling requirements. So how we can handle the exceptions? So checked exceptions must explicitly handle or code won't compile. Okay. If we not handle the checked exception, then code will not be run. Okay. And in unchecked exceptions, handling is an optional but recommended to avoid the crashes. So next is cause. So in checked exception, usually external factors beyond the program's control, and in unchecked exception, mostly unchecked exceptions cause due to the programming mistake. So let's see the examples. So the examples of checked exceptions are IO exceptions, that is input output exception, then SQL exception, file not found exception, class not found exception, and etc. And the examples of unchecked exception, that is null pointer exception, arithmetic exception, array out of bound exception, or illegal argument exception. We will see some example. So I've created a class as error handling, and in that we have created a main method. Now I'm trying to create a string. Okay, string a is equal to code. So as you can see, the error has been occurred here. Okay, so this type of exception is called as checked exception because it is checked by the developers. Okay, the warnings that comes, it is checked by the developers, are called as checked exceptions. Fix this. Okay, if we are creating a string, then s should be capital. Okay, so I've make this as capital. Now the error has been gone. Now let's say I will initialize this string as null, and we are making this string to uppercase. So for that we will print a dot to uppercase. As you can see in the code, we do not have any warnings. Okay, no error in the code. Now let's run the code and see. Okay, so as you can see, the error that we have get is null pointer exception. So this is the example for the unchecked exception. In the code, we do not have any error, but after running the code, we get an error. So that is nothing but the unchecked exception. And before running the code, we get some warnings. So that type of exception is called as the checked exception. So this is the main difference between the checked exception and unchecked exception. So one more difference is checked exception are checked by the developers. Okay, that developed an app, it is checked by the developers, and unchecked exceptions are checked by the JVM. So after we run the code, we will get the warnings. So that's why it is checked by the JVM, that is Java Virtual Machine. So the next difference is performance impact. Checked exception slightly affects performance due to force handling, time impact, but it no compile time impact, but may cause unexpected crashes. Okay, so we do not get any error during the compile time, but after running the code we see an problem. So next is package. So checked exception is found in java.lang.exception. Okay, excluding the runtime exception, and this unchecked exception is found in java.lang.runtime exception. Okay, and its subclasses as well. So next difference is impact on the execution. If the checked exception is not handled, the code will not be compiled. If we not handle the unchecked exception, it may cause abrupt termination at runtime. So obviously the impact on the code execution is if we not handle the checked exception, then the code will not be compiled. Okay, and if you are not taken care about the unchecked exception, code might terminate abnormally. Okay, so this is the difference between checked exception and the unchecked exception. So thank you for watching this video.